Bold Predictions, Chapter 21, the things that you believe in so much you claim you would bet your own money on. I got some tonight that I think I would bet right along with you guys. Let's start with this one. In the Big Ten, from Knoxville, Tennessee, though, first prediction, if Purdue beats Penn State to open the season, they will end the season with 10-plus wins, including the bowl game. This is where schedule matters, and it matters a ton. Now, Penn State and Purdue play on a Thursday night to start the season. Penn State, obviously a big year for them. Purdue fancies themselves as a Big Ten West contender. 10-plus wins, though. You may be thinking, Purdue doesn't win 10 games. Well, they won 9 last year. They've got the same quarterback back in Aiden O'Connell they had last year. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what they don't have back in a second. This is a 7 on the boldness scale. Now, their over-under win total is 7, but keep in mind what the prediction said. They have a win in week 1. So if they're 1-0 after Penn State, Penn State is one of, if not the toughest games on their schedule. They're only a 3-point dog in that game, 3.5, depending on where you look. They've got one of the Big Ten's easiest schedules. Look at that thing. Their out-of-conference games are Syracuse, Indiana State, and FAU. And then their road games are at Minnesota, at Maryland, at Wisconsin, at Illinois. You notice what you don't see here. You don't see Michigan. You don't see Ohio State. It's very, very favorable. They end the season with a 3-game stretch of at Illinois, Northwestern, and at Indiana. So this is doable. Here is the potential problem or pair of problems. A lot of folks are looking at Aiden O'Connell returning at quarterback, and they are not really realizing, okay, you got your quarterback back, but you lose a couple of dynamic pass-catching threats, and you also don't have a run game to speak of. You didn't last year. It's going to have to drastically improve this year. What I worry about is an offense that seems a little bit more hollow this year. That's what I'd worry about. Now, around Purdue, they'd tell you, don't you worry. We got some wide receivers you don't know the names of yet, but you soon will. So that's why I don't think this is anything more than a 7 on the boldness scale. I think they very well could do that. That's including the bowl game, just one more win than they had last year. Next up, I've got SC written down, but it's South Carolina. Ruben said, here's a bold prediction for you, and it pains me to say it, but I'm willing to bet my South Carolina Gamecocks win fewer games this year than they did last year. I should be optimistic, but I'm not. From Rock Hill, South Carolina, former home of Jadeveon Clowney. They went 7-5 last year, so the prediction is they're going to be worse than that record-wise this year. I made this a 7 because there's a great battle in my mind. One is I think they'll be a better team this year than they were last year. I also know that that schedule does them no favors, and I could just take last year's team, have them play this year's schedule, and for all I know, last year's team wouldn't be as good record-wise. There were some close games there. So I'm making this a 7. I'm going to err on the side of this is a better team, therefore I expect a little bit better record or better performance. They are 71% returning production. I think that's in the mid-30s in Bill Connolly's ratings. But if we're talking about them winning less games than last year, take a look at the schedule here. They play Georgia State, Charlotte. Those 2 are wins. I'm going to chalk those up as wins, and if they're not, we got very, very big problems. South Carolina State, I'm going to call that a win. So we got 3 wins there. So we're looking down the rest of the schedule, and I'm asking myself essentially, do I see them winning 3 games or less the remainder of the way? And the games we're talking about, to just read them off right quick, they go to Arkansas, they got Georgia at home, they at Kentucky, Texas A&M, Missouri, at Vandy, at Florida, Tennessee, at Clemson. I probably could chalk the Vanderbilt game up as a win. Could argumentatively do that. I just think they're going to find a way there. They overachieved last year record-wise. I think they will slightly overachieve record-wise again this year. Jesse, is their total 7? I think their over-under win total's around 7 or 6, somewhere like that. So it's at 7, okay? So I'm telling you at least 7-5 gets them where they were last year, which shoots down this prediction. So I'm saying it's a 7 on the boldness scale, that they are worse record-wise than they were last year. Now you want to see someone fall off a cliff. Take a look at this next prediction. We stay in the SEC. Here's a prediction for you. LSU goes 4-8. They finish last in the SEC West. Yeesh. Okay, 4-8. This obviously spells disaster. This is an 8.5 on the boldness scale. I'm going to tell you why. It's not that I think Brian Kelly's LSU may be immune to struggle in year 1. Quite the opposite. I think there will be some growing pains down there. But to have a 4-8 disaster, you have to be inept at quarterback. You have to have quarterback go south for you. And if you had one guy you were leaning on and you had no depth in the room, you may be vulnerable to that. That's not LSU, though. One of the stronger points on LSU's team is they have depth and quality in the quarterback room. They don't have a Heisman winner in there, but they don't have tomato cans in there either. So it could be Garrett Nussmeier, could be Jaden Daniels, could be Miles Brennan. Point being, one of those guys at least will pan out, and this could even be a team that could lose their starting quarterback to injury or whatnot and still be plenty good enough to be better than 4-8. So they're not prone at quarterback. They play Southern and New Mexico, and I'm going to chalk both of those up as wins. So you're looking at the rest of the schedule telling me they're going 2-10 or 2-8 the rest of the way, and I'm not sure about that. They got Mississippi State at home. They go to Auburn. They got Tennessee at home. Ole Miss has to go down there. UAB comes in there. I'm sorry, there are more than 2 wins the rest of the way on that schedule. So that's an 8.5 on the boldness scale. Next up, this one does not involve numbers, so we get to get a little bit more creative with this one. Mark said, greetings from Flint, Michigan. Greetings, Mark. I have a feeling Notre Dame fans are going to have regrets about letting Brian Kelly get away. That's my bold prediction. Well, did they let him get away? I guess there's an argument that could be made that's the way it went down. As far as I remember it, Notre Dame was pretty surprised when Brian Kelly left. So it's not like he walked up to them and said, I'm going to leave if you don't give me a thumbs up, and they just thumbs down. That's not the way that went down. Having said that, okay, I could see what world you're living in here. Still, I'm going to make this a 7. I think it's kind of bold to suggest in year 1 under Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame fans, just the average Notre Dame fan, is going to have regret about Brian Kelly walking away. And I'm high on Brian Kelly, so it's not even that. It's just, you know where Notre Dame's recruiting class is ranked right now? You don't have to look far. They're ranked number 1. More on that in a second. We're going to talk about recruiting a little bit later on. Recruiting is what it's about this year. So absent a disaster season, and for Notre Dame, I would say 8 wins or less this year. If Marcus Freeman's 9-3 or better, and they're in the top 5 or top 6 recruiting, like I'll even give them room to fall off a little bit. If they're that high ranked in recruiting, that's what people are going to look at. They're going to say, okay, year 1 was whatever. He had to get his feet under him, but look at what we got coming, including at pretty much every position they need. Look at what we got coming. So that's part A. Part B is this kind of heavily depends on what Brian Kelly's doing. Because if Brian Kelly's down there struggling to win 7 games, struggling to make a bowl, then hey, Marcus Freeman could struggle too. I don't think anyone's looking around in South Bend and saying, boy, I wish we had that guy down there that is barely making a bowl game back. Now, if Brian Kelly's winning 10 games and Marcus Freeman struggles, maybe a little bit different, but keep in mind that LSU win total is down where it is at 7 for a reason. So chances are Brian Kelly does have a struggle or two this year. Chances are Marcus Freeman does have a better record, and chances certainly are that Notre Dame ends up having a really, really good recruiting class, better than any they had under Brian Kelly. So I think it's pretty bold to say that. Last one, a guy we have not talked about in quite a while. Allen said there is no way Herm Edwards at Arizona State survives the year in Tempe. Bold prediction, he is fired before the end of the season. I think this is a 3. It's not bold at all. Surprised it hasn't already happened. This has nothing to do with record this year. I don't think they're going to be particularly good. Their roster is being gutted by, attrition via the portal because a lot of people didn't want to hang around there anymore. A lot of their staff is gone. Herm's pretty much the only one still there. I just don't have any idea how this ends well. I guess the only question would be if they're average to above average this year on the field, is it a situation where the administration just lets him finish the season? Because I think that the end of the story has already been written. I think the last chapter's been written, and kind of strangely, they're filling in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th to last chapters, doing whatever in the world it is they're doing off the field out there right now. I think they're going to pull the trigger before the end of the season. I personally feel that way. It's no guided intelligence there. It's just my gut feel. And so I would say that's not bold at all. Yeah, I think it's fairly likely that there are moves there before the end of the season. So not actually, if you think about it, the boldest bold prediction segment we've ever had. There were no 9s. There were no 10s. I guess that means we agree.